To those who believe they exist and entertain the simplistic belief that they are all our benevolent space brothers here to guide us into a battle-free utopian society fails to correlate with the known facts of numerous case histories. Here's what one Navy captain involved in the cover-up said to Ray Stanford, eminent UFO researcher, after he caught Stanford with a piece of an extraterrestrial craft, which incidentally came from the Socorro incident. He says, "You have no right to that dynamite. What do you want to do? Blow up the whole economy, the entire social structure, and every other institution worth keeping?" Those in a position to know are under no delusion. They know the facts. People are not ready to know the facts, and they have no need to know the facts. They could, half of them. Half the people maybe go off the deep end. So Stanford asked the captain if those in the know had cracked up after learning the facts. "I doubt it," he was told, "but those men are trained to meet and accept crises. They are capable of rational judgment in the face of the unexpected. Their decisions are based on experience in considering the welfare of larger groups of people. That provides experience and discernment that the average man, not even the UFO researcher, ever has. Well, isn't that special?" Giordano Bruno got burned at the stake in the year 1600 for daring to say that the sun does not revolve around the earth. Even though he was correct, people did not want to hear it. The church did not want to hear it, and the fact that the earth revolves around the sun was successfully suppressed for another 200 years. It eventually caused a major upheaval in the church, government, and thought, a realignment of social and traditional values. Today, I'm telling you that a small group of military and civilian thugs, usurping the constitutional authority of the Senate and the Congress, entered into an illegal agreement with an alien nation in which, under the cover of national security, human lives were traded for highly advanced technology. The enormous cause involved in this cover-up and production of the technology was financed by the importation of massive amounts of drugs from Southeast Asia. Fortunately for my efforts to get the truth out, all I'm getting is a little ridicule. But let me tell you my story, and you can make up your own mind whether or not it's true. In its effort to protect our democracy, our secret government made a deal with this alien nation. But we were double-crossed, and the government believes that it's vitally important that you don't find anything about it until they can get things under control. But the situation now is so far out of hand at this point that there is very little chance of that. And I believe that you have the right to know the truth. It's your right as an American. It's your right as a human being. What I'm going to tell you now is true beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not important that you believe it now. Just listen and follow it away. The next few months, maybe even years, you'll wake up one fine day and say to yourself, "My gosh, the son of a gun was right." Of course, by then it'll be too late. So listen up. Number one, the United States government since July 7, 1947 has collected and has in its possession at least 15, but probably closer to 25 extraterrestrial flying saucers belonging to at least 3 different alien civilizations from far beyond our solar system. At least 5 are undamaged, and the Air Force has flown these under a secret program known as Project Red Light, which is continuing to this date at the Nevada test site, and I'll show you exactly where in a few minutes. Number 2, the United States government has in cryogenic storage at least 30, but maybe closer to 100 alien bodies representing as many as 3 different civilizations from far beyond our solar system. The bodies were or are kept at Wright-Patterson and Homestead Air Force bases, and there is an alien corpse display at the CIA facility in Langley, Virginia. At least 3 of the aliens were captured alive, and 1 is still living up at Groom Lake, Nevada, and I'll show you exactly where. Number 3, at least 1 million Americans, and probably far more, have been abducted since the early 1940s. These abductions last about 2 hours and are carried out for 3 purposes. The first purpose is to insert a tiny transmitter, the size of a BB, or in some cases much smaller, into the brain of the subject in order to monitor certain biological functions, the specifics of which are unknown to us at this time. The transmitters are implanted into human beings first at the age of 4 or 5. They are picked up again and checked out at the age of 10 or 12, and at about the age of 18, the implant is sometimes removed. The second purpose of the abduction is to program the individual through post-hypnotic suggestion. On the basis of some of these cases, we believe that some sort of enormously important event may occur within the next 1 to 4 years. And the abductees have been post-hypnotically programmed to proceed to a certain place and perform a certain function during that event. In some cases, the abductees have been shown what appears to be similar to a TV channel changer and advised that at the proper time they'll remember what the unit was for and how to work it. Under our best hypnotic techniques, we are unable to find out when or what. The third reason for the abductions is interbreeding, experiments where we've been crossbred with the aliens. In his book, Intruders, Bud Hopkins tells us about his 2.5-year investigation of Kathy Davis of Indianapolis, who was inseminated by aliens and produced 7 crossbreeds. Number 4, during the past 13 years, over 14,000 cattle throughout the U.S., Canada, and South America have been mutilated in a completely grotesque manner. The mutilations have been investigated by many state and federal agencies, including the FBI, and was the subject of the Emmy Award-winning production A Strange Harvest, produced by Linda Moulton Howe for the CBS affiliate in Denver. The government issued several press releases blaming the mutilations on predatory animals. However, it was proven that the mutilations were performed using advanced laser surgical equipment, which actually cut between the cells of the tissue, a process presently beyond our technology. The animal's genitals, rectum, reproductive organ, and eyes were removed, in most cases while it was still alive. One interesting phenomenon in nearly all the mutilations is that no blood was found in or near the carcasses, and that there was no vascular collapse of the remains. The mutilations have occurred as far north as Canada, where mutilations are classified top secret by the government, and as far south as Brazil. Mutilations have occurred this year, over 200 this year, have occurred in a large East Coast city. Number 5. It is unknown exactly which one of the 70 or more alien civilizations which are visiting us at this time are responsible for the mutilations. However, there is private scientific speculation that these parts and their glandular secretions are used for food and or genetic experiments. Now I'd like to show you an excerpt from Linda Howe's Strange Harvest, drawn in 1971. This is the case of the right hand not knowing what the left hand was doing. It was edited by Major Donald G. Carpenter and Colonel Edward B. Thurkelson. Chapter 13, titled Unidentified Flying Objects. According to this, the UFO phenomenon has been around about 50,000 years. Chapter 13 of Introductory Space Science brings the Air Force Academy students through about 50,000 years of UFO history. From the 47,000-year-old granite carvings in the Hunan province to the Tassili Plateau rock sculptures of 6000 BC, to the story of Ezekiel in 593 BC, to the Irish accounts in 956 AD, up through 1742 and the UFO over London in that year, to 1897 when the first cattle mutilations occurred on the Hamilton Ranch in Leroy, Kansas, to 1947 and the Ken Arnold sightings, to the Lonnie Zamora incident in Socorro, New Mexico. On April 24, 1964, a police officer witnessed 2 humanoids dressed in silvery coveralls jump in a cylindrical type object and fly away. The chapter covers the Betty and Barney Hill abduction of September 19th, 1961, which became the first widely known abduction case. The Betty and Barney Hill case was particularly fascinating because under separate and highly controlled conditions, each was hypnotized separately for several months with a post-hypnotic suggestion that they would not remember or discuss between themselves what was discovered. After the conclusion, their stories matched perfectly. One very peculiar incident related by Betty was the fact that at one point the alien stuck a needle into her stomach. She asked him why, and they said, it's a pregnancy test. She told them, well, that was no pregnancy test here on Earth. That was in 1961. There was to be a prophetic account because amniocentesis was developed in the early 1970s. This was a method to surgically withdraw the fluid from the uterus of the pregnant female for use in determination of sex or genetic disorders in the fetus. This was 8 years after her abduction. On page 461 of the Academic Physics book, this surprising statement is made. The most commonly described alien is about 3.5 feet tall, has a round head, arms reaching to or below his knees, and is wearing a silvery spacesuit or coveralls. Other aliens appear to be essentially the same as Earthmen, while still others have particularly wide wraparound eyes or mouths with very thin lips. There is a rare group reported as about 4 feet tall, weight of around 35 pounds, and covered with thick hair or fur. Members of this last group are described as being extremely strong. Now I'd like to show you something similar to this. This comes from the Stringfield documents. Here's a picture of what is known as the Gray. We've all seen this. Up at the test site, their nicknames are the Gourds. They call them the Gourds because of the shape of their heads. At least that's what the guards call them. They probably come from a star system known to us as the Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, about 37 light years away from us. As you can see, the relative portions are of a 5-month fetus. These drawings were made with the help of a CIA informant and a surgeon who performed an autopsy of a Gray in the late 40s. Here's a detail of the head. There is a large brow. The eyes are quite large, brown in color with no eyelids. Here's a detail of the hand. It has 4 fingers which are slightly webbed with no opposable thumb. And the following items were noted by an autopsy, during an autopsy by an Army surgeon at Walter Reed in the late 40s. About 3.5 to 4 feet tall, weight of about 40 pounds. 2 almond-shaped eyes without pupils, no earlobes. Mouth small, appears not to function as a means of communication or means of food ingestion. Arms extending to the knees. Skin blue or gray. No teeth, no apparent reproductive organs. Colorless liquid prevalent in the body without red cells. No digestive tract. The available evidence indicates that we have a wide variety of visitors, about 70 different species, in fact, with various different types of motivation for being here and different ways of interacting with us. Some have had us under surveillance since deep antiquity, periodically stimulating our developments. Since 19,000 sightings of enormous craft swooping low over the Hudson Valley in New York. In October and November of 1987, there were hundreds of recorded sightings of craft larger than a 747 flying slowly over Whitfield, Virginia, reported variously as huge triangles or disc-shaped objects. In the past year, human and animal mutilations continue unabated in New York, Nevada, and the Midwest. Abductions are continuing nationwide. The Foreman, Arkansas sightings of huge objects have started again. The Oklahoma sightings of February 1st, 1989 were a dazzling array of unidentified flying objects seen by more than dozens. Then there were the sightings in Key Largo, January 12th, and continued sightings in Illinois, Wisconsin, Kansas, Washington, Alabama, Pennsylvania, and nightly sightings in Central America, particularly Guatemala City. On March 4th, 1988, the ABC affiliate in Pensacola, Florida, presented a 30-minute documentary showing 36 clear photos in a minute and 38 seconds of an extraterrestrial craft, and these sightings are still continuing. Let me say, proudly thought of themselves the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently produced the atomic bomb. In one world war, they had built jet aircraft that would exceed the speed of sound in a few months. They had built bombers with intercontinental range that could carry weapons of enormous destruction. The post-war era had brought economic prosperity and the future seemed bright. Now just imagine what it was like for those same leaders, all of whom had witnessed the panic of the Orson Welles broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, just 7 or 9 years earlier. Thousands of Americans had panicked at a realistically presented invasion of Earth by beings from another planet. Imagine their horror as they actually viewed the dead bodies of the real aliens, frightening little creatures with enormous eyes, reptilian skin, and claws at the end of their fingers. Imagine their shock as they attempted to determine how the strange saucers were powered and could discover no part even remotely similar to components they were familiar with. No cylinders, no pistons, no vacuum tubes, no turbines, no hydraulic actuators. It's only when you fully understand the overwhelming helplessness the government was faced with in the summer of 1947 can you comprehend their perceived need for a total, thorough, and sweeping cover-up to include the use of deadly force. This enormous cover-up was initiated on September 24, 1947 by President Truman by an executive order which established a group of 12 top military, scientific, and intelligence personnel of their time. They were known as the MJ-12. Although the group exists today, none of the original members are still alive. Gordon Gray was the last member to pass away, as original member. As each member passed away, another was appointed to fill the position. The group today is composed of more members than the original 12, and among those who are thought to be current members are Dr. Kissinger, Dr. Ed Teller, General Lou Allen, head of space technology, and Admiral Bobby Inman. On November 18, 1952, President-elect Eisenhower was briefed on Majestic 12 and the cover-up by Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter. Hillenkotter was MJ-1 and had been the director of Central Intelligence Agency from May of 47 to September of 50. Sometime during the latter part of 1953 or the early part of 54, President Eisenhower was rushed from a vacation in Palm Springs to Muroc Dry Lake, which is now called Edwards Air Force Base, and witnessed a flying saucer. According to some sources, Eisenhower told the aliens that the world was not ready for them, and that's where the matter rested for about 10 years. Incidentally, one of our well-known astronauts witnessed that saucer landing at Muroc Dry Lake. Project Blue Book made 14 reports before it was terminated by the Air Force in 1969 after reviewing the Condon report. The public got to see 13 of the reports, number 1 through 12, and number 14. Project Blue Book report number 13 consisted of 624 pages typed offset, reproduced on white paper with a gray cover. It covered U.S. government official UFO procedures, classifications, and all top-secret UFO activity from 1942 through 1951, addendum to 1963. With a former information analyst with the Air Force Electronic Security Services, who saw an actual copy of the Project Grudge Blue Book Report number 13. This man's name is Bill English and will be speaking with us today. I also talked with Bill Cooper, formerly of Naval Intelligence Briefing Team, who also saw the Grudge 13 report. I also talked with a government scientist who also saw a copy of the report. Here are some of the things that they remembered as being in the document. Chapter 1, UFO activity, significant UFO sightings, UFO landings, UFO alien close approaches, abductions, detention, crashed UFOs, UFO retrievals, sensitive military and industrial areas where close encounters occurred, technical details on dismantled UFOs, UFO physics, exotic nuclear and weaponry, clean breeder reactor the size of a football, ultrasonic light ray and beam weapons. Chapter 2 was the photographic section, included all glossy pages, photos either 3.5 by 5 or 8 by 10. photos of sensitive UFOs, color photographs of crashed UFOs, 3 in good condition, 1 dismantled. Color photographs of deceased aliens averaged 4.5 feet tall, color photographs of 3 live aliens, color photographs of human mutilations, including head, rectum, sex organs, internal organs, blood removal, etc. Chapter 3 was human and humanoid aliens, humanoid species, humanoid autopsies, no indication of age, small species similar to human varied in a height of a few inches, liquid chlorophyll-based nourishment. At this time, they were aware of 17 different species. Food absorbed through the mouth membrane, waste excreted through the skin, language similar in appearance to Sanskrit, used mathematical phrases. Live alien communicated only desired answers to questions, remained silent on undesired questions. In the early 1950s, according to Project Blue Book Report number 13, people who had close encounters of the third relocated to one of 4 relocation centers encounter experienced. These sites were located in the Midwest and the Northwest U.S., with 1 site on the Utah-Nevada border. These relocation centers had extensive medical facilities available to deal with all medical emergencies, including radiation poisoning, psychotherapy, and deprogramming. One example of this is the Darlington Farm case of Ohio in 1953. As they sat there eating dinner, the lights in the farmhouse began to dim. Outside, the dogs and other animals began to raise a ruckus. The 13-year-old boy gets up from the dinner table, see what's going on. He calls to his mother and father to come outside and see a funny light. The mother and father went out on the porch. As they got to the porch, one of the dogs broke loose and ran into an open field in front of the house. The boy began chasing it as the light came down and began to hover in the open field. As the mother and father watched, the boy started screaming for help. The father grabbed his shotgun and ran into the field, only to witness his son being dragged away by little humanoids into the fiery, large-looking object. The father fired several rounds into the object, but to no avail, and it took off. They found the dog with its head crushed, but no sign of the boy or any other footprints. The father immediately called Darlington police, and they came out to investigate. Their official report read that the boy had run off and was lost in the forest which bordered the farm. Within 48 hours, the Air Force made the determination that the family was to be relocated, and the mother and father were picked up by Air Force intelligence, and all personal belongings and possessions were loaded into Air Force trucks and moved to a northwestern relocation site. The mother was in shock and had to go through a great deal of psychotherapy and deprogramming, as did the father. On April 25th, 1964, the first official communication between the aliens and our U.S. government took place at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. 3 saucers came in, 1 landed at a prearranged area, and a meeting was held between the aliens and intelligence officers of the U.S. government. The whole sequence was filmed by 5 motion picture cameras. An acquaintance of mine in Los Angeles, Bob Emenegger, was given 800 feet of this film in 1973 to view when he was asked to prepare a documentary when it was decided to originally release the truth about flying saucers to the public. This was in the beginning of 1973. Unfortunately, when Watergate developed, it was decided the public could not handle 2 traumatic developments at the same time, and the document was changed. The document, which you can still get today, but I don't know where, started and it gave you the whole history of UFOs up until the very end. And the crowning thing for this documentary, which was narrated by Rod Serling, was they were going to show this landing at Holloman, the actual film. But what happened is that because of Watergate, they decided that they were not going to release the true information to the public. And the end they changed and they put in drawings. And the drawings at the end simulate. And Rod Serling, I'll show you this one cut from UFOs It Has Begun. And Rod says, let's consider an incident that may happen in the future or could have already happened in the past. Well, of course, it already did happen in the past, but they weren't going to tell the public. And one of the interesting things about this is if you look very closely, and I'll try and point it out, there is a 7-second segment right after the beginning, and I'll show you where it is, that's part of the real film. And I was over in Frankfurt about almost a year ago with Emenegger, and we were in the bar talking about the film, and I said, how did you guys fake that saucer shot, that one coming over the hill where the camera zooms in? I said, it's awful hard to tell. I said, boy, kind of looks like it might be part of the real film to me. And he said, yeah, it is part of the real film. And I said, let me guess, you left it in there because 1, the public wouldn't believe it, and number 2, would it cost too much money to fake it? He said, yeah. He said, that's exactly right. The public would not believe it. It's too short a segment. You can't really tell, and it saved us a lot of money trying to fake it. So I'll point out that 7 segment, and that is part of the real shot coming in.
That can be made. Let's look at an incident that might happen in the future, or perhaps could have happened already. The premise is that contact is made by extraterrestrial beings with representatives of the United States Air Force at Holloman Air Force Base in the deserts of New Mexico. The day is clear. It's about 5:32 a.m. at Holloman Air Force Base. Traffic light. One recon plane is on the field ready for takeoff when Sergeant Mann is given a report of an approaching unidentified craft.
Yeah, Bill, no, nothing on the phone.
I'll repeat it again. Unidentified approaching objects on coordinate 49er, 34 degrees southwest following
Probably a stray civilian, maybe. Keep me informed.
I see him over there. Check with Edwards. Make contact with him, Bill.
This is Holloman Air Force Base Control Tower. Identify yourself. What's your tail number? We're encroaching on military airspace. Warning, identify yourself. You're in a restricted military air corridor.
Call the base commander.
Base commander's office. Sergeant Whitmore speaking. Yes? Yes, hold on. Colonel, for you.
This is Colonel Horner, yes? Yes, an unidentified vehicle. You warned the aircraft again?
142, turn left.
What's its shape?
Radar contact.
Check Edwards? Civilian patrol? Okay, all right. Sound a red alert.
Unidentified aircraft approaching.
Hey, Bill, give me a quick check with Glide Patterson Intelligence. There may be an experimental craft from somewhere, I don't know, here. Alert the fire chief and security and safety.
Two military interceptors are dispatched to escort the unidentified crafts out of the area. During a routine photographic mission, a tech sergeant and staff sergeant of the base photographic team were aboard a helicopter at the time and run off several feet of film of the three objects, one of which breaks away and begins a descent. A second high-speed camera crew on the ground runs off approximately 600 feet. The cameras continue to roll as the extraordinary vehicle comes into view. It hovers, almost silently, about 10 feet off the ground for nearly a minute and yaws like a ship at anchor, then sets down on 3 extension pads. Commander and 2 officers, along with 2 base Air Force scientists, arrive and wait apprehensively. A panel slides open on the side of the craft. Stepping forward, 1, then 2, and a third, what appear to be men dressed in tight-fitting jumpsuits, perhaps short by our standards, with an odd blue-gray complexion, eyes set far apart, a large pronounced nose. They wear a headpiece that resembles a rope-like design. The commander and the 2 scientists step forward to greet the visitors. Arrangements are made by some sort of communication, and the group quickly retires to an inner office in the King 1 area. Left behind stand a stunned group of military personnel. Who the visitors are, where they're from, and what they want is unknown.
Visual at Norton Air Force Base, and he actually saw the film run through. Robert Emenager saw blow-ups from the original frames of the film. In the late 1960s and possibly earlier, MJ-12, representing the U.S. government, made a deal with these creatures called EBEs. The deal was that in exchange for super advanced weapon technology that the aliens would provide to us, we agreed to ignore the abductions that were going on, and further, we would help suppress the information on the cattle mutilations. The EBEs assured MJ-12 that these abductions, usually lasting about 2 hours, were merely the ongoing monitoring of a developing civilization. In fact, the abductions were for a much more sinister reason. The U.S. government was not initially aware of the far-reaching consequences of their deal. They were led to believe that the abductions were essentially benign, and since they figured they would probably go on anyway, they agreed and merely insisted that a list of current abductees be submitted to MJ-12. Does this sound incredible? Unbelievable? Those responsible for this disaster hope and pray you will dismiss it as so much rubbish. But it's getting harder and harder for Americans to buy this cover-up. There has not one official statement from the government on flying saucers since 1969, when the Connor report said that they didn't exist, and when the Air Force closed Project Blue Book. Not one government official has uttered a word about flying saucers except President Reagan. What did President Reagan say? Well, in the last 2 years of his presidency, he made 4 references to a threat by invaders from outer space. The first one was on December 4th, 1985. You can get a copy of this statement. Remarks of the President to the Ballston High School students and faculty, wherein he says, I couldn't but one point in our discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in this world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all our little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we are really all human beings here on this earth together. Then, September 21st, 1987, text of remarks by the President to the 42nd General Assembly of the United Nations. He said, in our obsession with the antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to our universal aspirations of our people than the war or threat of war? And in Chicago, June 1988, President Reagan compared the danger of nuclear weapons with a hypothetical situation in which the world was threatened by a power from outer space. Now, wait a minute, you say. Why haven't I heard about any all this? How come nobody is talking? Well, because reporters don't want to dig. They're afraid of ridicule. They're afraid people will laugh at them. They think it's smart or in to ridicule UFO researchers. If you ask them why aliens couldn't be here right now on Earth, they say, well, because somebody would know. But I'll tell you the real reason. It's because it's a secret. It's the biggest damn secret in the history of mankind. Now I want you to hear of what some very credible people have had to say about flying saucers over the years. Here's Vice Admiral Hillenkotter. It is time for the truth to be brought out. Behind the scenes, some high-ranking Air Force officials are soberly concerned about UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. Here's President Carter. If I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings.
Whoa. What's that? I just built a budgeting app
and the scientists. I am convinced that UFOs exist because I have seen one. What did Carter do for us? Here's what Major Gordon Cooper had to say. Several days in a row, we sighted groups of metallic saucer-shaped vehicles at great altitudes over the base. This was in Germany in 1951. And we tried to get close to them, but they were able to change direction faster than our fighters. I do believe UFOs exist, and that the truly unexplained ones are from some other technologically advanced civilization. Here's what General Nathan Twining had to say. The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. Here's what... here's our old friend Dr. Carl Sagan. He was drawn into MJ-12 in about 1963 because of statements like this. In 1962, he told the American Rocket Society convention, "We must be prepared to face the probability that we have been visited by intelligent beings from outer space and the likelihood that as a requisite to those visits, they would have used bases on the averted side of the moon." Old Dr. Wilbur Smith in Canada said flying saucers exist. The matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States, rated even higher than the H-bomb. And one last quote from an old friend of ours, General Douglas MacArthur. In 1955, here's what he told the New York Times. Now remember, this is General Douglas MacArthur talking. "The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of Earth must someday make a common front against an attack by people from other planets." MacArthur said that in the New York Times. Now, 7 years later, to the graduating class at West Point, here's what else MacArthur said. "We deal now not with things of this world alone, but with unimaginable distances and as yet unfathomed mysteries of the universe. We are reaching out for a new and boundless frontier. We speak in terms of harnessing the cosmic energy of ultimate conflict between a united human race and the sinister forces of some other planetary galaxy." During the period of 1979 to 1983, it became increasingly obvious to MJ-12 that things were not going as planned. It became known that thousands more than the people listed on their list were being abducted. Some of our top scientists who had objected to this going on, and 50 of them were massacred in the summer of 1980. By 1984, MJ-12 must have been a stark terror at the mistake they had made in dealing with the EVEs. They had subtly promoted Close Encounters of the Third Kind and ET to get the public used to these small, odd-looking creatures that were compassionate, benevolent, and very much our space brothers. MJ-12 sold the EVEs to the public, and we're now faced with the fact that quite the opposite was true. In addition, a plan had been formulated in 1968 to make the public aware of the existence of aliens on Earth over the next 15 years, to be culminated with several documentaries to be released in the 1983-1985 period of time. These documentaries would explain the history and intentions of the EVEs, and the discovery of the grand deception put the entire plans, hopes, and dreams of MJ-12 into utter confusion and panic. Meeting at the country club, a remote lodge and private golf course, comfortable sleeping quarters and working quarters, and its own private airstrip built exclusively by and for the members of MJ-12, it was a factional fight of what to do now. Part of MJ-12, which had become now military heavy, wanted to confess the whole scheme and shambles it had become to the American public, and beg their forgiveness and ask for their support. But the majority of MJ-12 argued that there was no way they could do that. The situation was basically untenable, and there was no use in exciting the public with a horrible truth.